Kids' movies? Creepy? No, they weren't.
We'll see. We'll see.
The 1980s, a time of shoulder pads, twin sets and scrunchies. And also some rather alarming and quite terrifying children's TV. Whilst I personally did not live the heyday of the 80s, I just snuck into the decade. And as a consequence of that, the films I was watching in the very early 90s, in my formative years, were from the late 1980s, which you may know, if you have watched any films from the 1980s, was a time of exploration in special effects to see just how much they could get away with, I guess. Now, in this series so far, Behind the Books, we have looked at the whimsical, the quite charming, but if you have read my epic fantasy series Reverta Rising, you may know that there is also a dark side to my fiction, and I have a feeling these movies might have something to do with it. And the films I am talking about are from the movie company Canon Films, which made a bunch of live action fairy tales in the late 1980s. In 1986, at the Cannes Film Festival, they announced that they were going to create a series of live action fairy tales in an attempt to rival Disney, the first of which was The Frog Prince, coming out in 1986. Now, they had 16 films planned, but only 9 were released, and you may realise the reason for this when you see the films. But only 9 were released, so 1986 was The Frog Prince. In 1987 we had Beauty and the Beast, Rumpelstiltskin, The Emperor's New Clothes, Sleeping Beauty, Hansel and Gretel, Snow White and Red Riding Hood. And then in 1988 the last of the Canon movie tales was released, and that was Puss in Boots. Now, there were a few famous faces in these, such as Christopher Walken and Diane Rigg. They had a budget of $50 million to produce all 16 of the films. Now, if you know anything about the film industry, you know that, well, that's a bit of a shoestring budget, even at the time. So, what were the results?
We'll see. We'll see.
The first of the films I want to talk about is Snow White. The music I can still sing even today, but I will not torment you with that because the clips from these films are going to terrify you enough. We don't need me singing. We really don't. So, the Snow White adaptation of Canon Films is, in some ways, a masterpiece if you're into the really weird. The evil queen from this, who was played by Diane Rigg, she carries that whole film. Her singing is just, and her facial expressions, she is my evil queen. She will always be my evil queen. There is no way around that. And there is a very good reason why she is my evil queen. When you see her mirror, the magic mirror. Yeah, this is still in my nightmares. This is absolutely terrifying. How did they think they could put this on a kids' TV show? Bearing in mind, you might find this very laughable now. I was only about 3-4 years old. Terrifying. So yeah, this is my evil queen. Let me introduce you. Do you like her? Is she adequately evil for you? Many people who watch these films now just comment on how awful they are, but they're watching them through a modern eye. If you watch them through the eye of somebody who grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, you kind of just roll with it, really. But it has the best version of Is Not Is Too that I've ever seen in a movie.
She is not.
She is too. Is not.
Is to.
Is not.
To.
Not.
To.
Not.
To.
As we all know, in Snow White, the evil queen is obsessed with beauty.
So you think that she's more beautiful than me?
And at the end, when she is told that Snow White is still alive and she's marrying the prince, she flies into such a rage that she throws something at the magic mirror. Now, when she does this, her magic starts to, how should we put this? Disintegrate. As does she. As she makes her way towards the wedding, she slowly becomes more old, a bit sort of Dorian Gray-esque, culminating in this final scene. Yeah, just kids movie? Really? Anyway, that was Snow White, which is actually one of my favourite childhood movies, strangely. I don't know what that says about me. But let's move on to the next film, which was Hansel and Gretel, and that came out in 1987 as well. I do remember hiding behind the sofa for parts of this movie. The beginning is a bit wishy-washy. There's a horrible mother. I mean, she's literally brutal to her children, sending them out into the woods. But that is the story. Let's give it to Canon Films. They stuck with the grimness of the grim fairy tales. They really did. So points to them for that. But let me just show you what I was not okay with. The creepy gingerbread people move. They are alive. They move. I'm not okay with that. Not okay. So yeah, that was probably the first of my hiding behind the sofa moments, when these gingerbread people started moving. Not okay. And yeah, we all know the story of Hansel and Gretel, the two children who get lost in the woods and they leave a trail of breadcrumbs to find their way back. However, of course, that is a stupid idea because the birds are going to eat the breadcrumbs. I mean, anyway. So yeah, they stumble upon a witch's house made of gingerbread and candy, and she's lovely and she feeds them. But this is just a ploy because she is an evil witch, and she puts Hansel in a cage and is going to fatten him up so she can eat him. And in the meantime, she makes Gretel, because she's a girl, do all the slave labour. Fetching the water, cleaning, all that kind of stuff, you know, of its time. Now, in the end, we know that it ends somewhat happily for the children. They are freed, they get to go home, they reunite with their loving father. But it doesn't end quite so happily for the witch. I mean, is that good acting? Or is it bad? I really can't tell. It's on the line there of brilliant or terrible. Look at the glee on that child's face. There's something wrong with her. Anyway, this next part, what happens to our witchy woo here, I do think, since rewatching these clips to film this video, I can see some links to a character in the Reverter Rising series, a certain creature called Cereus. See what you think. So they have defeated the witch, they dip her in her own magical gingerbread batter and put her in the oven, slamming it shut. You'd think that would be the end of it, no? No, because again, when they did that, they broke the witch's magic. And yeah, I don't know why, but this next bit was the worst bit for me. It freaked me the hell out as a child. Watch and see. The house explodes into a massive pink goo. And then the gingerbread people, children, come from inside of them. Like, I was not okay with this at all. I watched it over and over again. I watched all of these films over and over again. And I think somehow these things have sunk into me. So yeah, those were the more horrifying ones. The next film that we spent time watching in the early 90s of these Canon movies, me and my sister, was Beauty and the Beast. I think for my sister, it's a toss-up between Snow White and Beauty and the Beast, which was her favourite. Mine was definitely Snow White. The Beauty and the Beast one for me was filled with annoying songs. The songs are just awful. Not even in like your cliche 1980s music way, they were just awful.
For the moon and the moon will appear, lighting the sky just for you.
But it was also pretty boring. The build-up is very slow, and then there's these weird dream sequences where Beauty actually sees Beast's human form in her dreams. And spoiler alert, just like the Disney version, he ain't handsome. Anyway, there was, I do remember, a moment where the statues in the courtyard come to life and they dance with her. But the actual moment where the statues come to life is creepy. And it reminds me very much of episodes of Doctor Who. And I have an idea written down in my big folder of shiny new ideas based around statues. I haven't written it yet, but I wonder where that came from, deep in the recesses of my mind. But anyway, here's a little snippet of Beauty and the Beast. Tell me what you think of Beast. Do you think they did a good job here, considering the other versions that we've had? Or is this also just too terrifying?
Do you find me very ugly, Beauty?
I see a strange beast.
A strange beast. Wow. She's really got her manners there, doesn't she? Yeah, so over the course of this, it sticks very closely to the original story. Again, well done to Canon Films for doing that, but that is perhaps why these films were seen as so, or now they are seen as so creepy, is because the original versions of these fairy tales were not nice. They were morals to teach children not to do things or how to respond to people in the world at the time that they were written. Very important to state that. And over the course, when she's captured, obviously in place of her father who stole a rose, he sits down to dinner with her every night and asks her every night if she loves him. Dude, you've just met her, you've kidnapped her, you're holding her hostage. What do you think? But he does make a lot of magical things happen. She seems to be having a pretty good time, so each to their own, I guess. And then, of course, we all know the ending to Beauty and the Beast, don't we? Don't we, ladies? How she falls in love with the Beast and then, unfortunately, breaks the spell. And in every version, the human version of Beast is just not quite what Beauty wanted, is it? No. This film, and I think any version of Beauty and the Beast, or films like this, also contributed a lot to the huge surge in, how should we say this? Monster romance that is out at the time. And I enjoy reading it from time to time, let's just put it that way. And I think, again, it may lead back to films like this.
You give me more than I've ever been given.
We know, Beast. She said that. We know. So there you have it. A look at some of the creepier influences of my writing. You can definitely see some of the darker themes in my work in movies like this, but these weren't the only dark and creepy 80s, early 90s movies that did influence my writing. Did you ever watch any of these Canon movies? Are you going to watch any of these Canon movies? If you want a weird 80s night, then give it a go and do let me know what you think of them.